So thank you so much for taking some time and chatting with us today, Tony. Really glad to have you on board.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the main reason why we have you today is obviously the new liquid tension experiment.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit of how that finally came to fruition after so many years? Because there's always been whispers and talks in the wings about the third album coming out. How did it finally happen?
Well, for one thing, I didn't hear the whispers in the wings, but that's probably a good thing. And for
Yeah,
those who don't, we did a couple albums some 22 years ago,
yeah.
and then we toured briefly then, and we toured in 2008, and we haven't done anything since then. I'm not sure why, but it really wasn't. It was in the back of everyone's mind, but it wasn't hovering like, when are we going to do it? And then the past year with the lockdown and the very
Hmm.
bizarre situation that none of us were touring, as opposed to all of us touring all the time in different things.
Yeah.
I think it was Jordan Rudess, our keyboard player, who got the idea and talked to Mike Portnoy, and I all I know is in early June, last June, when they emailed me and John saying, "Hey, what do you think?" We were like, "We have to do this, and we have to do it right away."
Yeah.
And suddenly, the dark, unhappy year turned. There was
Mhm.
this big ray of sunshine coming in. Boy, if we can safely get together and actually have a meaningful album come out of this year, it would
Mhm.
just rescue the year from
Yeah.
being very, very dark and weird.
Yeah. So
And
that's
so we're very happy about the outcome
mhm.
musically, but also just the fact that we were able to get together. Had it not been for the lockdown, it wouldn't have even come up this year for
Oh
sure.
wow. So definitely
Eventually, it would
is,
have.
yeah, but definitely a silver lining. And if that's all started off in June, that's a very tight turnaround time for like a music album to be produced, eh?
Yes and no. First of all, I hope I'm right about June. It could have been in May, but it seems
Okay.
like, well, we got together. Yeah, it must have been in June
Mhm.
because it didn't take long to. Uh, um, how should I put it? Our calendars were empty. So as soon
Mhm.
as we had the idea to do it, it was just a matter of getting Jimmy, the engineer, and getting a studio manager and booking the time, and then go do it. We didn't have anything else pressing that was getting in the way of it.
Oh, that's great.
And
Yeah.
this band, bands have different ways of writing together. Of course, many different ways. And this band has always written together. The guys
Hmm.
will bring in some ideas, but it wasn't like we're trading. We didn't trade any files or any ideas. We get together in a room, and John might say, "I got this riff. What do you think?" And if I might go on about that,
Oh, please
typically,
do.
immediately Jordan Rudess is playing it as if he wrote it. He's playing it good. And me, the bass player, I'm like, could you just play that a little slower? I gotta write down the notes and I'm
Right.
gonna have to practice a little. And then really quickly, like, and Mike, by the way, on drums, he's not just playing drums, he can play it right away. And then he said,
Hmm.
well, what if we do this? And he kind of twists and turns things. And he had a little blackboard making notes and stuff. And then Jordan said, well, I had this idea, but if I put it in this key, maybe we could. And pretty soon that 2 minute thing is 5 minutes, and then it's 10 minutes, and then it's
Jeez.
15 minutes.
Oh
And
boy.
the bass player is still
Mhm.
saying, that first riff, could you just play that a little slower? Because I'm trying to, I'm sort of keeping up, but
Yeah.
and I know I'm going to fix things later. But it's
Right.
an amusing process, and it's the same way we worked 20 years ago. It's exactly
Hmm.
the same. The guys are zooming ahead way faster than me, but also sometime in the middle of a piece, they might say, "Hey Tony, play us like a heavy Crimson riff, or just
Hmm.
give us a bass line, and this section will be that." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I could do that." So I do contribute, but I lag behind. But also I always have I'm a photographer also, and I always have my
Hmm.
camera. But in with liquid tension, I'm observing, even though I'm participating,
Hmm.
I'm not just observing as a photographer and getting trying to get the blur of John Petrucci's fingers as he is picked, which I did, by the way.
Hmm.
But I'm
Hmm.
also observing the amazing nature of being in a room with those guys. They're such virtuosos, and they not only play fast, but they learn fast and they write
Hmm.
fast, and at a very high quality. So I'm kind of both a participant and an observer, and it's
Right.
kind of a curious situation to be in.
Yeah.
And I'm always very happy to be there, and I'm always very challenged by being with these guys. And that's
Mm.
something I've learned long ago as a musician. If you want to get better, and we all want to get better,
Of
than
course.
being
Yeah.
challenged by better players or by just players who are very good is an important part of what helps us to grow as musicians and to be the best players we can be.
Yeah, and that definitely shines on this particular album because I've been lucky enough to hear it. And the first thought that I had was, how do they maintain so much energy after so many years? Like, they're like zooming faster than even I could keep up. And, you guys got a couple years on me. So is there a secret to how you were able to maintain so much power and energy?
Well, I think the musical energy and power mostly comes from the other guys, not myself. Although I can keep up with the
Mhm.
energy part. I don't think it's something we think about it. I think there's a lot of creative energy in that band
Mhm.
and from those guys, and it's a good thing. It's not that hard to technically play fast. I'm a bit older, a good bit older than the other guys, and it is indeed a challenge. Yet another challenge in my career as I get older to keep the technique that I had when I was younger,
Mhm.
and also to the cognitive thing about learning new music. Uh, I used to consider myself quite a whiz at that
Mhm.
until I met these guys and realized that they were better than me at that. But then I also got older and I'm still pretty fast at it, but humbled and impressed and challenged by being in the room with the other guys.
Mhm.
All of it, I can babble all day about it, but it's a good situation. And as you can tell from my talking about it, we like each other a lot, and we
Mhm.
have a lot of musical mutual respect.
Right.
And when you have a band or even a project, that's really important. It makes things go much easier and much faster when there's no saying, "Well, I'm not sure I love what you're playing here." There's none of that in this band.
Mhm.
We present our ideas and the other guys contribute, and then we move on to the next section. And these compositions get longer and more complex, and then hopefully we get to tour with it someday.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing this being performed live. And one of the songs that I really connected with, I mean, there were two that I loved. One that was just you and Mike on, just the two of you
Mhm.
on the Chris and Kevin's amazing Odyssey. And some of the sounds that you were able to bring about through the bass it was blowing me away. Like, how were you able to capture those different types of sounds?
Wow. Well, thanks. I'm glad you liked that
Right. Yeah.
piece, and I can tell you this: if it was totally an improv, which
Mm-hmm.
we like to do, love to
Mm-hmm.
do. That's always been part of what this band does, and if you see it live, it won't be the same. I guarantee that because it
Yeah.
wasn't written. It was just completely. But let me tell you a few things about it. To the
Yeah.
session, I had brought all the basses I could fit in my car, including bass that's behind me there,
Right.
the NS Electric Upright, which sounds like an upright bass, and it's the wrongest bass to bring to a liquid tension session. I don't know why. I just wanted to have it there. Who knows? Just in case. So one evening, we were jamming, as we do every. I say evening. Typically, the band would work from about 11, sometimes 10 in the morning till 10 at night. Then we're okay. It's enough. Nobody wants to completely be exhausted. This is for 2 or 3 weeks in a row of every
Right.
night. So often at 9:30 or something, if nothing was going on, then we would just jam, roll tape, virtually roll tape,
Mhm.
and jam and see if we get some material for other pieces, or sometimes we'd get a piece that could stand on its own. Uh, and one that particular night, John and Jordan were doing something, and Mike and I started playing, just the two of us. And he played something that made me think, oh, maybe it's time. I'm in my little kind of booth, isolation booth with all my instruments and a ton of pedals, and there's the electric upright sitting there. So on that particular something he played made me say, okay, maybe it's time to play it. And I played it, and it kind of was working out. And then it sort of got, I don't know how to put. We'd say it went left or turned left. It got weird. It got
Mhm.
really out. And I said, okay, there's the bow just sitting there. I wasn't planning on playing with the bow at all, but with the bow, I can make some of those sounds you're talking about that are
Mhm.
almost not music at all. They're just sounds.
Yeah.
A big string being rubbed by a horse's hair.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So it seemed right. And Michael, I could tell, I wasn't actually watching him, but I could tell from what he played that he was loving it. And
Mhm.
sometimes, well, every night, almost every night we did it. And things can last an hour or more. But that one, he went back and listened to it. And he said, you know what, however many minutes of it, this 8 minutes of it is worth having on the album. Let's do that. As we had
Mhm.
done in a different way with a different kind of music on that earlier album with another Chris and Kevin's title.
Yeah. And I always wondered, who is Chris and Kevin? I know I should be doing some research, but that always, especially with that first album. Yeah, do you want to let us know,
I,
or is that
I
still a secret?
I want you to find out and tell
Okay.
me because I don't know. First of all, I don't
Oh,
name any of the pieces.
oh,
Mike's brilliant at that. Mike and the guys name the pieces, and he probably told me when he named that one on the first album. He probably told me why, but it was 20 years ago. I
that's
forget. And this was named after that first one. And when I find out the story, I'll be glad to share it. But I don't know.
well, no, that's fair. The other song that I really particularly love, I also love classical music, and so seeing
Ah,
Rhapsody in Blue being on here, because I believe you guys toured with this when you did your last tour. The two questions that I have around that is why choose Rhapsody in Blue as a cover? Because when I find people doing covers, like especially Mike doing a lot of covers with Neil Morrison and all that, generally it's classic rock or prog rock or something like that. This is the first kind of classical piece. So why a classical piece, and then why choose to feature it on this album?
good questions. And I also am not only a fan of classical, but I started
Mhm.
out as a classical musician and then became a jazz player and then a
Right.
rock player. So my history with that piece goes way back. Um, it all comes from the fevered mind of Mike Portnoy. Only about a week before that tour, the 2008 tour, he emailed us all. He said, "What if we do Rhapsody in Blue?" It's just
Yeah,
he and
it's
the other guys are always coming up with ideas like that that strike me as crazy, but good crazy. You know,
yeah,
like what? We don't do covers at all. And as you said, if you're going to do a cover, excuse me, Rhapsody in Blue,
yeah. It's a
it's
beautiful
it's
piece, but
it's
such a
classical, it's
strange.
beautiful, and
Yeah.
it's also long and
Hmm.
complex.
Yeah.
And the reason I laughed when he asked the first time is I thought, well, that's going to be quite a bit of work for me to learn it, but not compared to Jordan Rudess
Yeah.
to ask any keyboard. Jordan can do amazing things, but to ask a
Yeah.
keyboard player, okay, a week from now, when we have 2 days of rehearsing and then a tour, I'd like you to learn this piano concerto that's
Yeah.
very difficult,
Yeah.
and by the way, we're going to change it in rehearsal. We're going to make it not the way it originally was. That would be too easy. We're going to make
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
version of it. And Jordan was yeah, and Mike was yeah, and we did it and added sections where John Petrucci played echo, kind of ambient echo stuff, and it all worked. The reason I am a fan of that is it all worked for the piece.
Mhm.
I feel my feeling at the end of having rehearsed this is back in 2008, having rehearsed up that piece is I felt like this band can do justice to that piece if it's going to be made into a rock piece. There are so many sections, and Liquid Tension loves to do different sections and honky tonk and jazz a little bit and really heavy speed metal. We can do all of that. And this piece deserves that. So if anybody's going to do it, I'm glad we're tackling it.
That's
Okay,
true.
so
Yeah.
that was in 2008.
Hmm.
Then, and I was really a fan of that, but it ended with the end of the 1 week tour.
Hmm.
And so when somebody mentioned it, I think it was first brought up as not being on the album this time, but being an extra. Hey,
Hmm.
let's record that with high quality, that same piece. And I was like, boy, I not only think we should do it, but I hope it makes it onto the album because not only is it very special, but for me personally, I have some fans who aren't uh, fans of the music I do because of the speed and because of the
Hmm.
power of it, but other stuff, and some of them have a hard time getting into the Quitention experiment, to tell you the truth. Uh, and I think this is the gateway drug that's bringing them in because they
Right.
hear this and they think, "Wow, that's really great! It's got everything the original had, but it's you guys." And then I can play them a piece that we wrote
Hmm.
that's one of our gentler, not gentle maybe, but a
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
gentler, and they start to get it. So I'm particularly pleased in a personal way that I think we're seducing into the fold some people who at least from the beginning of this piece they're in, they're going to love it. It's a great piece.
Yeah, I'm very glad that it was on this because what you guys were able to do with it is just outstanding. Like I was very moved by the end and also the different changes you guys had made.
Next.
Yeah. Um, I really wanted to touch about the book that you had done because you had mentioned a little bit of the photography that you had done as a photographer, but last year you put out that photography book.
I did.
How did that come to fruition? What made you want to publish your works and as a photographer?
Well, thanks for knowing that. And we say last year, but it actually came in just a few weeks ago.
Oh, right.
I started to pre advertise it in December, and I thought I'd have it by the end of December, but I
Right.
didn't have it till February. But anyway, yeah, it's one of the things that would like the Liquid Tension album that wouldn't have come up if not for the lockdown. I've been taking
Mm,
pictures pretty intensely on the road since at least the 70s. I've really been on the road a long time,
right.
and I put a lot out on my road diary on the web, but some of the pieces are very special. And in the back of my mind for a long time has been that the the photographs deserve some exposure beyond just being on my website,
Hmm.
especially some of the quality ones. Not because I'm a great photographer, but because I've been lucky to be in a situation that from with a vantage point that nobody
Yeah.
else has. For instance, when Peter Gabriel first started floating out into the audience on the song
Hmm.
"Lay Your Hands on Me," well,
Yeah.
there I was on stage playing the bass, but also taking pictures of him from the stage with the audience going crazy. Many things like that, and with King Crimson and with other bands. So beginning in June, early June, I said, well, I could do a solo album, or I could start going through those tens of thousands of negatives and slides and all kinds of formats from before digital, and collate them and put it into a book, the kind of book that I felt it deserved, which is a coffee table size, really big book. I'll
Yeah.
show
Let's
it
see
to you
it.
as we. Yeah, it's.
Oh, that looks
I called
gorgeous.
it. I called it "Images from a Life on the Road,"
Hmm.
and it's big book. Not only it's in all this King Crimson. Any page you
Oh,
turn to
jeez.
has interesting things from my perspective. I mean, that's that alone. The
Hmm.
one, this one, it's the
Oh, yeah.
drums. We're taking our bow, but they know I'm taking pictures of the audience after the show. That's a King Crimson show, and those are the three drummers. And and sometimes they'll just turn around and look at me and be part of the picture. Anyway, it's called Images from a Life on the Road, and at my website, I guess it's the simplest way to find it. And I
Excellent.
appreciate TonyLevin.com, and I
Hmm.
appreciate you bringing it up.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're one of my favorite bass players playing in a lot of my favorite bands. I mean, I fell
Thank
in
you.
love with Peter Gabriel's music and then moved on to King Crimson when I was
Well,
mature enough to understand it all. And then
which
just
I'm not yet, but someday I will be.
someday it'll finally click. And just the last question that I had really quickly was with all those different bands that you had been playing in, like King Crimson, Peter Gabriel, Stickman, and the Aristocrats, how do you keep all those different styles and almost personalities in check when you're going to those different bands?
That's a good question. The Aristocrats, however, I didn't play with. Great band.
Oh, sorry. I for some
Yeah,
reason I had you
I'll,
in here as the
I'll
Aristocrats.
take credit. I'll call them
Go
and
for
ask for
it.
my royalties. I'll ask for
That's
my
right.
$5.
That's right.
Royalties. Uh, uh, it's not a problem, really. I think most of us musicians, all the guys I know, we're very good at focusing on what's in front of us and focusing intensely. You got to do that to play music well, your concentration stuff. We're not. Well, I'm not so good at looking into the past. The only time I think about my past and what I've done is when I'm doing an interview, to tell you the
Mm,
truth,
right.
and not so great at looking into the future, which is why none of us have retirement plans, which is why we keep playing
Keep
into
playing.
our elderly years, and which is a good thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there isn't a big adjustment in if there's a style of music that's different than what I've been playing. And usually, most of my playing is on the road, so I'm talking about road playing.
Hmm.
The one exception to that is that I play jazz on the upright, on the electric upright that's back there, and
Right.
with my brother, we have a band called Levin Brothers, and the jazz feel for my fingers is different from the rock feel that I'm usually playing, and it takes me a week or two of just playing that style to get back to the degree that I can play it. It's still not, I'm
Right.
still not up with the great bass players who play that all the time, who are that player and not just kind of visiting that genre the way I do. So that's the
Right.
one exception. Coming back out of jazz into rock is a snap. There's no
Right.
problem. But going from rock to jazz, uh, I like in a perfect world to have 2 weeks of playing every day
Right.
before I get out and do a show. A
Right.
good question.
Oh, no problem. Well, thank you so much for taking some time and chatting with me today. And yeah, talking about your book and your work with Liquid Tension Experiment. Thank you so much, Tony.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate your knowledge about what we were talking about, and thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem.